Welcome to A Parent's Guide to Child Development. I'm your host, Annamarie Von Firley from Fledgling's Flight. Each podcast, we strive to give parents the tools they need to help their child thrive through conversations with experts in child development and psychology, where you can learn about the most important information that you didn't know existed. How does play evolve as children grow, and why is it so important at every stage? In today's episode, we're exploring how play changes over time. Our guest is Dr. Celina Moore, a board-certified pediatrician with more than 20 years of experience supporting families through every phase of child development. As a founder of More Healthy Kids, a concierge pediatric practice, and the medical director of Acoma Nutsoto Foundation, Dr. Moore blends clinical excellence with a deep commitment to relationship-based care, global health equity, and parent empowerment. Together, we'll unpack how different forms of play, from tummy time to pretend games to social media and group sports, help shape a child's brain, body, and sense of self. Whether you're parenting a baby or school-age child, this episode will give you a fresh insight on how to support healthy development through the power of play. Let's dive in. Welcome, Dr. Moore.
Thank you. It's really great to be here.
So, why is play so essential to a child's development?
That is such a great question because a lot of people are very dismissive of play. Play is not just fun, something that you do as a recreation or when you're not doing something you're supposed to be doing. But it's really essential for brain growth. It is critical for social emotional learning. It is fundamental for motor skills, and it really opens up your creative mind. So, in so many domains, play is the way it all begins. It's the building blocks of development.
Amazing. Does play differ across the key stages of childhood, such as infancy, toddlerhood, and preschool?
Absolutely. It kind of mirrors the development of the brain. So if we go through every age and stage, we can see what's happening in gross motor development, language development, cognition, and then what the play will look like at each stage. Because oftentimes you don't really think about play until the child has the vocabulary to say, I want to play. But you can start play as early as you cut the umbilical cord. I mean, you can start right at the very beginning because a developmental focus at the age of, like, let's say, a newborn or a 1 month old really is in developing head and neck control. Vision, oftentimes people think that the baby can't see. I don't know where that myth came from, maybe mole rats or something. I don't know, but babies have good vision, and the way I usually explain it to my parents that I talk to is the baby can see your face perfectly from breast to face. So if you're nursing your infant, they can see your face. So it's kind of instinctive oftentimes that we kind of get into a newborn's face like really closely, but that's where they see our faces. And they can start tracking faces and objects. And as that starts developing, then we can see a little bit of social smiling and cooing. So the play in a newborn in the first couple months of life looks like face play, right? Face to face play. So you're making eye contact, you're smiling. And also, it's very instinctive for new parents to start baby talk, cooing and having a little bit higher pitch of a voice. All of that's really important for the wiring of an infant's brain. And then the motor part that happens after that, the strengthening of the trunk and the neck muscles and the head control is when you put the baby on the tummy and then you have some tummy time. And so you can put like a mirror in the field of vision so they can see themselves, or putting a colorful toy. Other things you can do for play at this age is high contrast toys and books, so black and white toys and books. And then for motor, also that gentle rocking that, again, we do so instinctively when we have a newborn, that we kind of just rock back and forth and it's very gentle. All of that might not look like play, but it is. And it helps the baby start making those wiring connections. I don't think things get really fun until like around the age of 4 months of age, when the development starts where the motor development, they start rolling over. Fine motor is when you reaching and grabbing and everything goes into the mouth. And so now a baby's starting to develop using the mouth as another hand almost, right? Another way to explore the world. And that social interaction of the reciprocal smile and the cooing back and forth is the verbal part of the development at this age. So what play will look like then would be kind of like a cause and effect type of toy. So maybe a crinkly book where they can like grab onto the crinkly paper of a book and then bring it into their mouth and chew on it. That doesn't seem like play. It seems messy, but it is play. Or a rattle that they move the rattle and the rattle makes a noise and they can associate a movement with the noise. And that is also play. They still love looking at themselves. I don't think babies ever stop loving looking at themselves, so mirrors are still great, but then they can actually hold the mirror and eat the mirror. Um, Around 6 months of age, a baby can cross the midline with the fine motor, so they can pass objects from one hand to the other. So things like clapping can start being integrated into play, and reading. I'm a huge proponent of reading. And you can start really, really early. They don't need to know the story of Winnie the Pooh. You can just say it for yourself. But they love to hear voices and inflections. And that time that you're spending with the babies also really important. Songs are great, clapping or bouncing to a rhythm. And this is a really great way of having interactive, healthy bonding time with your baby. Then, as the baby continues to develop, now we're getting to like 6 to 9 months, and it gets even more fun then. So, at 6 months, gross motor wise, your baby can be able to sit with a little bit support. So their trunk is nice and still, more or less, right? They are not kind of flopping over, so they can sit up, maybe with tripoding the hands in front of them. And here we can have like a little bit more of an exploration play. The vision's better by this age. You can put a toy just out of their reach. It's not, it sounds kind of cruel, and I'm just saying this, but really it's a way that they can explore, get themselves developmentally ready to learn how to start crawling, um, in fine motor, what a baby is learning right now is being able to like separate the fingers and rake in. So you put something just out of reach and they can rake in the object. And grasping things with the whole fist is still, so you want to get big chunky toys that they are going to explore also with their mouth. Um, and then around closer to 9 months, then the fine motor gets a little bit more fine-tuned. And from going with the entire hand, you now have what we call an immature pincer grasp. So now you can have smaller objects. So this is where you can um, play with stacking, right? So now you can have large stacking things where you can use your whole hand and then go smaller and smaller with the hand movements in order to make a stack grow. Um, Cups are a great toy. Building blocks, even if it's just banging together, we still getting that cause effect type of play going on. And then babbling starts becoming a little bit more complex. So it goes from 4 months of vowel sounds of ooh, ah, right? And you can sing songs that might be mimicking that to consonant vowel pairs like da or ga. And at this stage, now they start playing with their voices. So songs and rhymes that have different voice intonations. I usually call this stage like they become like little pterodactyls where they're screeching or playing with their voices. They pretend cough and they love to laugh. They also start recognizing their names. So calling your child the name that you want your child to be called, right? We oftentimes have like a ton of little nicknames, but here around 9 months of age is when they start recognizing their names. So maybe incorporating their name in a song or in a rhyme also is it's going to help them develop. And the sensory play becomes very important. So using safe household items like wooden spoons or textured fabrics or things that or or even a regular spoon that has that smooth cold texture to it. All of these are totally appropriate toys. You don't need to really buy anything. You can just use things around the house. And then I'm going to round out the first year, and I'll let you ask me any questions about this. But as we get closer to 12 months of age, we're still in infancy. We call the first year of life infancy, but now they're becoming more mobile. So now we have the gross motor that is developing more. So now we got a child that's crawling, that they're pulling up to stand and cruising. We call cruising is when you hold on with both hands and you walk side to side, like on the edge of the couch or on the crib. So that's what's happening motor wise. So the games that you could be, or toys that you can be using at this age are push pull toys. So toy carts, lots of kids, they start pushing all the furniture around. So all of a sudden, like the chairs are getting pushed and the ottomans getting pushed. And all of that is completely appropriate at this age. And, oftentimes as parents, we want to kind of almost instinctively say, wait, don't do this, you're going to fall. But if you make sure that it's safe, an ottoman is a perfectly good toy to be pushing around as they're gaining those motor skills. Let them push into a wall because then they learn the developmental skill of backing up. So don't, it's very tempting to clear everything out of the way so there's no obstruction. But this is where the brain is learning how to navigate obstructions and know how to use different motor skills to back up when they're up against a wall. So that's a little bit of problem solving that we've got going on there. In terms of language, this is when the baby goes to repetitive babbling, like around 9 months. So da 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 ba 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 da 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 da. So incorporating rhymes and songs, reading Dr. Seuss, all of that alliteration in Dr. Seuss is fantastic for this age as well. And then cognitively, what a baby is going to be learning is very simple problem solving. How do I get this toy out of a box? How do I back up from against the wall? So, play ideas here will be stacking and filling. So, putting small objects into a cup and then dumping it out and doing it again. Interactive games, now we can start clapping and playing pat a cake or simple commands like if you're happy and you know it, they might not quite get it yet, but introducing this type of language and repetition is going to help them with their language development as well. Um, they're not quite ready for pretending, but this is where you plant the seed. So pretending to feed a doll or pretending to talk on the phone, right? So they can start mm, seeing how that is done. You're modeling that for your baby. And then in books, these are the board books because we're still eating them at this age, but you like board books with textures and then a little bit of interactive, like cause and effect type of play. So lift up the flap to see like a little mirror, or lift up the flap to look at this little fuzziness, or however the book is laid out. And then modeling, pointing pictures, naming objects. So the first year of life, there's a lot of play where we might not necessarily be calling it play, but it's play. So at this age, play is the building blocks of growth, right? They're not just playing, they're wiring their brains for development. They're learning speech, they're understanding social connection, and you're planting the seed for problem solving. So the first year is a lot of fun.
Amazing. So, you gave a lot of examples of different types of toys that are appropriate and help with building skills and helping children get meet those milestones that they should be achieving in that first year of life. In the way that I don't know, we're calling them psychologists. I don't know. There's a way that naming, somebody's done a naming convention as far as like the different stages of play. And so in the first 3 months, it's called what is it called? It is called unoccupied play. And the way that I think of it is when babies are born, they can't control any part of their body, and they have to figure out how to move this bag of bones and how to control their muscles and how to do that. And that first 3 months of life is really sort of figure out they kind of flail around until they can figure out how to move
And
their arms, and they flail their legs around until they find those muscles to control those as well. And then, like you were saying, around 4 months of life, they kind of figured out like how to how to move their arm intentionally and start having those intentional movements. And then after that, they're still they move into another stage that is called solitary play, and that's a long, long one that lasts like from 0 to 2 years old. And that's really just children, playing happy, content to play by themselves and not with others. And I know that you talked about being engaged with your child and playing with them, which is important, right? Because the child needs that social development as well. They need to hear language, spoken language by a human being, eye contact, like all of these things are really important, plus all the bonding that happens as well. But if your child is content to explore and play on their own, how can parents support them at this stage of play?
I don't think I really like the term solitary play.
Okay.
I think that, being connected to your child is very important. You're not initiating the play always. It's more a response, a call response type of situation, especially with the cooing and the social smile and all of that. But definitely the bonding is happening at this age, and singing and reading and talking to your baby is kind of most of what you have to do. So it's not necessarily, I guess the solitary part is maybe it's initiated by the baby and they're the ones wiring their brain. I don't know why it's called solitary play. They seem to be content oftentimes just cooing in their crib in the early hours of the morning. And it's often tempting to go and pick your baby up when they're awake. But this is also time where the brain is learning all these different milestones and allowing them to explore that on their own before you inundate them with toys is also a healthy balance.
Yeah, I think the reason why it's called solitary play because it's most of the play other like namings of it really is in relation to other peers or children, right? So from solitary play goes on to onlooker play, which is where they're
Right.
observing and they're curious about other kids.
Right.
Before you get to parallel play, where they're playing next to somebody but not with them. And so it's really not until many years into a child being alive that they're even wanting to engage with another
Right.
human other
Right.
than family members, right? Where of course they crave that attention and that interest. And I think by using the word solitary play, I don't think they're encouraging that you just abandon your child, leave them alone to play. I think they're just observing that children are not necessarily seeking out engagement, and they're happy to be with on their own, playing in their
That
crib.
makes more sense than what I was
Yeah.
in my brain.
Yeah, we're not encouraging like just ignoring your baby because you definitely need to engage with them for sure. But moving on to like the onlooker play, so that's like 2-year-olds. So they start beginning to notice their peers around them. They like to watch other children play, but they're not interested in joining in them. And so, what would be the reason developmentally for this change in engagement?
She starts a little bit earlier than two, more in the, 12 to 18 months where they start having a little bit more of curiosity. And that's really reflecting an emerging social cognition so that you have the development of joint attention, which is, for example, you point to something and the child looks at what you're pointing and you're looking at what you're pointing and you both go to that together, right? So that's the joint attention. And that starts developing at this age. Imitation also starts at this age and understanding self. So the 12 to 18 months of age is an explosion of development. It is so much fun to witness. So now we got the gross motor of walking independently, starting to climb, exploring very actively. So there's a lot of calories being burned at this age. And we've got an improvement in the fine motor of hand-eye coordination. So, when you're in the beginning, when your baby's feeding themselves, they miss their mouth or they go to the side. And now the hand-eye coordination is getting a lot better. The fine motor is getting better. You have a fine pincer grasp at this. So now we can scribble. So at one, you can give the kid a crayon and they can scribble if you want to do that. Um, that's why I love outdoor sidewalk chalk. That way you can wash it off. It doesn't go on your walls or your white couch. Um, Stacking, so you can make higher towers at this age. So all of that would be, kind of a modeling that a parent would do. And then you start noticing your child around 15, 18 months of age to have a little bit of reciprocation. So, what we see in language, for example, around 15 months of age is what does the dog say? Or where is your nose? And there's simple one-step commands where they can start doing animal sounds or body parts, and then you can incorporate that into a song or a book is a great way to be able to build on that language. And then, as you had mentioned earlier, you go from observation play, where they're just kind of like watching and learning and, forming those synapses between the different areas of the brain that goes from the motor cortex or the visual cortex to the motor cortex, the auditory cortex to the motor cortex, like all these connections, these wires that are being really developed in their brain, then they start the next stage, which is what we call parallel play, which oftentimes for parents is a source of frustration because now we're in, having play dates and the moms are getting together and you have kids in different ages and stages, and you see all the 2-year-olds sitting next to each other, all playing by themselves, and you're, let's play together. But developmentally, they're not there yet. So parallel play is around 2 years of age, and that's when children start playing alongside, but not yet with their peers. And this is where there's a lot of modeling again, supporting the growth of social skills. They start noticing how other children are playing. They're not ready to cooperate with them, but they're saying, oh, that's an interesting way to play with this toy. Maybe I should play with this toy this way. Or, oh, I did not know they could stack blocks so high. Maybe I should try it. So there's a little bit of challenge there that can start happening. And it lays the foundation of associative and later cooperative play. So all this is happening cognitively. And what parents can do to support this, still with the gross motor, we've got the push toys, riding toys without pedals because they don't get that alternating feet yet till around 3 years of age, right? Rolling balls, kicking balls, rolling toys, so like cars and trucks. You got the cause and effect play. So this is kind of like simple pop-up toys like a Jack in the Box or the little one that I had when I was a kid with the little, you push the button and the little, Sesame Street toy jumps out. So those cause and effect toys are really great. Um, Shape sorters start coming into play at this play. So being able to put a star-shaped toy in a star-shaped peg, that they start getting a little bit more fine motor shapes. You start learning about shapes. Pretend play beginnings. So around 18 months of age, one of the developmental milestones I look for in toddlerhood is and they hand the phone over to the mother. So they're saying gibberish, right? But we've got facial expression, we have intonation, we have, hand eye, we have this, and then we have the imitation. All of that is captured in this one milestone that you can say, they're on their way for, being able to move on to the next stage of parallel play. Nursery rhymes are still great. Nursery rhymes with actions. So the itsy bitsy spider, right? When you have hand gestures with words. Again, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. We can start doing that kind of stuff now because we're incorporating all these different layers of development into play. And then after that, as we're getting closer to two, now motor wise are getting faster, a little less clumsy. They start jumping with, you know, boom, boom. Like they're not necessarily both feet at exactly the same time, but there's like a little skip there, a little hop there. So now we can have like small little climbing structures, tunnels. They love tunnels at this age. You can make a little fort with all your, sofa cushions and make little obstacle courses, ride on toys, with that without pedals, but those are great for that gross motor development that's happening. And then we have the fine motor, so now more construction play, so more building, using different mediums and different objects for stacking and balancing. Mega blocks or those Duplo toys are great. There's wooden building blocks are fantastic, but with different shapes. So they have to kind of figure out how everything fits together. And then more pretend play. So now the pretend play gets a little bit more complex. It's not necessarily pretending to talk on the phone. It's more like playing kitchen, making a meal, sitting down, feeding, and this is the age where your child is going to start imitating things that you do around the house, whether it's talking on the phone or cleaning or trying to think of what else would be, toy cars with ramps, right? So now you're moving cars up and down and you're pretending to drive and you're doing vroom vroom because we're incorporating sounds with all this. Where are you going? I'm going to work, right? So that you can have all of these different language and concepts integrating into this pretend play. Um, Big fan of movement and dance, so using simple instruments like banging two spoons together or two wooden blocks together or maracas or things like that where you can have a rhythm and rocking back and forth and dancing. Simple instruments like a xylophone where there's a good cause and effect going on there. Lots of sensory plays, really good at this age. So sandboxes. As a parent, I did not really enjoy sandboxes because they were messy, and that like I'm kind of regretting that aspect of not exposing my children to as many sandboxes as I now look at it going, gosh, it'd be fun to play in sand again. Good thing I've got a beach nearby. Um, and then finger play painting or Play-Doh or things that might have a different consistency and a cause and effect. So all of that, those toys and games are really appropriate at this age of 18 to 24 months. And then you can start incorporating rules. So as we get closer to two, so I will roll the ball to you, you will roll the ball back. I will um, match this blue with this blue because we're learning colors right now, and then you can match the same thing. Or I'm going to find the shade, the star, and then you're going to find the triangle. So going with starting to use a little bit of incorporation of this is what's next after we finish the parallel play. Now we're going to play together. So getting the kids ready for that. So this stage, between one and two is all about exploration, see what their bodies can do, imitation, and who's the best person to imitate but your parent, right? So imitating parents, imitating siblings, imitating peers, and toddlers are now testing their limits. They have learned the word no. So they're testing their limits. They are copying what they see. They're using play to be able to show off their new motor skill, their new language skill. So this is again between one and two, so much fun. So much fun because you're seeing that gross fine, motor development, you're seeing that language develop, and they're having fun doing it. So love toddlers.
Amazing. So, what happens developmentally around 2 years of age? as far as like what's developmentally in the way that your child will play.
So in gross motor, so between the ages of 2 and 3, now they start running. At 3, closer to 3, we can start alternating feet. So going up the stairs. I down the stairs really depends on how brave the child feels. So I usually look at being able to walk up the stairs as the milestone of alternating feet. At 2 is foot, 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 and at 3 is your alternating, which goes hand in hand with pedaling. So at 3, think that they're 3 years old, they're 3 wheels on a tricycle. Now you can put your kid on a trike, right? And they can start pedaling. So that's what's happening. Oh, and then climbing. There's still a lot of climbing, and they started like jumping off a step or jumping off like a half step. So that skill starts happening there. So the ride-on toys are still great. Introduction of pedaling toys, slides. They love that movement. Tunnels, kicking, throwing, not catching quite yet. But that's what's happening in the gross motor. Developmentally, with language, what we're seeing is around 2 years of age, we start putting two unrelated words together. One of them's usually no, like mommy, no, or bye bye, daddy, right? Or baby, night night, right? So they start putting two words together. I usually don't say like thank you or I love you or bless you as separate words because at this age they've always heard it in context altogether, but unrelated words putting them together. As you get closer to 3, it's putting 3 words together. Now we're starting with sentences. So between 2 and 3, we go from 2 words together to 3 words or more together. And here we can start simple pretend play with like a little storyline. Like for example, I'm going to go to the store to get bananas and then come back to my kitchen and peel the banana and feed it to you. So you have that little linear storyline that's going on with everyday things that they're exposed to. Parallel play is still common, right? But they start, looking a little bit more at what, their friends are doing over there. So there's a lot more curiosity, maybe even walking over and taking a toy, which is also developmentally appropriate at this age. This is where the biting and the pushing and the hitting comes in, which we look at as, socially undesirable, but it is a way that they are exploring their boundaries, setting boundaries, seeing what happens when they do different actions with different kids. And also developmentally at this age, they start being able to follow two-step command. So um, go pick that up and throw it in the trash can, right? So that kind of language is developmentally what's happening. So other play ideas, train tracks are a lot of fun at this age. Um, Still finger painting, crayons, like the big crayons or the sidewalk chalk. Play-Doh rolling, they start being able to use scissors closer to the age of 3 so you can cut or tear the Play-Doh. And then early social play. So before it was, I'm going to roll the ball back and forth between parent and child. Now you can start incorporating a peer. So rolling a ball back and forth with another child and short turn taking activities like first I go down the slide, then you go down the slide. Not necessarily that we're doing anything cooperatively on the slide, but we're taking turns. So me first and no, me, that starts happening at this age. Closer to 2.5 and 3 years of age, developmentally, now we can start standing on foot for a little bit, pedaling a tricycle with a little bit more smoothly, climbing with confidence, where some kids are very reckless in the beginning with the climbing and they fall often, but those who were a little bit more inhibited by heights start climbing more around this age. The vocabulary gets a lot better. Now you got hundreds of words, between the ages of 2.5 and 3. And so now we are building like a little bit longer sentences. We've got roles coming in with play. I'll do this, you do that, right? So this is the beginning of integration of cooperative play. And then figuring things out, like figuring out how a toy works. How does this come together? simple, basic puzzles, like those alphabet puzzles or those shape puzzles, are a good toy for this age. And then we can start with our imagination. 3-year-olds are awesome because now they've got imagination. So, one of my kids, when they would come home from preschool at the age of 3, would tell me about like there was a giraffe at school today, and completely able to talk about this non-existent giraffe. And when I was talking to the teacher, I'm like, "Did you read a book about giraffes?" Or he's like, "I don't know where that came from," but it's in their head and they say it. And so oftentimes, like, it can it can be a little bit more worrisome for some parents when they get a story from a child coming home from school going, so and so hit me or something like that. But oftentimes, it's they just say things that are in their mind that not necessarily what happened. Oftentimes they say what happened as well. But at the age of 3, a lot of times the imaginative language is out there and they don't have the language skills or the social skills or the cognition to be able to say, "Oh, I just thought of that up. I'm just telling you." It is not an ulterior motive. It's not fibbing. It's just, I'm just saying what's in my brain. And there was a giraffe at school today. So now we can start having like a little bit more of imagination, like dress up clothes. I'm going to wear a cape, I'm a superhero, or I'm going to be a doctor today. I'm going to put the stethoscope around my neck. So, dress up clothes is fun at 3. Toy animals or toy cars acting out simple stories. This lion is going to now try to eat the tiger, but the tiger ran really fast and now the lion couldn't catch him. Like a really simple story that they're imagining out in play. Um, Messy play is still messy. Social play. So now you can have a bunch of toddlers, around the age of 2.5, 3, 3.5, playing a game together like Ring Around the Rosie, where there's instructions within the song, or London Bridge, right? So we have like a little song with physical activities, and then there's an action that everyone does at the same time. Hide and seek starts getting fun. They're not the best hiders, but yes, they can definitely play hide and seek. And chase. This is where they start chasing each other around the playground. So, not necessarily playing tag or it, but I'm going to run after you, then you can run after me type of play. And then we have the very simple rule following play. So very simple games with rules, learning how to roll dice, learning how to match memory cards, all that happens around this age, which is, part of our preschool age. As we're getting closer to 4, then the pretend play gets a little bit more complex because now we have more of a vocabulary. Now the word why has come in, like, why do we do this, right? And so the sentences are more complex. They want to know why, oftentimes, and the imagination just starts flourishing. So now we can go from simple imaginative play to more dramatic play. So this is pretending to play house, right? And everybody has a role, and there's somebody who's delegating all the roles, and everyone plays their role. Or pretending to all be superheroes. So each superhero has their power, and they all have what their role is supposed to be. Dramatic play like setting up a shop or setting up a restaurant where the rules are a little bit more complicated. I'm going to be the chef, you're going to wait the table, you're going to be the patron, and now we're going to have this very complicated role-playing interactive play. So this is around 4 years of age. And it is so much fun to watch their minds expand with that. And as a parent, you can either set the stage, let's play this, or oftentimes we get delegated to the least glamorous of the roles in this very complicated thing, uh, probably washing the dishes, right? In the restaurant game. And then with their peers are beginning to have friendships and group play. And with friendships, now we have conflicts and we have struggles taking turn. And I want to be the cook. No, I want to be the cook. And how kids are negotiating that conflict resolutions is happening at this age. Again, music and dance, always a big fan. Reading, absolutely. And then the early game with rules, like for example, like Simon Says or Duck, Duck, Goose, right? So it's a little bit more complicated than Ring Around the Rosie, right? Because everyone falls down. What happens if you don't fall down? You don't fall down. That's it. But if you're playing Duck, Duck, Goose and got hit goose and you decide, I don't want to chase the duck around, around the circle, then there is no game. And so being able to know that if you don't play by the rules, there's the consequence of that. All of that's being developed at this age. So it's a lot of fun. Um, and I can just keep going through four because um, four is great. Four, now we're getting closer to five. Um, you've got agreed upon rules. So now we can play a game involving a ball that we have to put the ball into a basket or we have to hit the ball into this goal. So they start learning the end point of the game and the rules that are, so it's not just you're assigned to a role and this is what the role does. And, this is how we play the game, but these are the rules and we all play by the rules and we all can use our strengths to be able to fulfill the role of the game that we're all playing together. Musical chairs, this is a great age to play musical chairs. Relay races, so I'm going to run there, I'm going to pass you this and you run back and see who does it faster. Red light, green light is also a fun one to play around the age of four. And then you got more like for the fine motor, more challenging in construction. So, making a bridge, for example, and with your building blocks, making a very tall, tall building that may or may not have an earthquake coming towards it. Um, Putting patterns with Legos, so using the same color for one wall and then the roof a different color when you're doing playing with Legos. With the creative arts, now we got they can now draw a face and they can put features on a face. So you can do recognizable people. These are the people in my family with these little stick figures of a really tall one for one parent and maybe one with hair for another parent. So you can have like these simple recognizable features in the creative arts. Stringing beads together also happens at this age. Storytelling play. So puppets. Puppets are great at the age of four, and acting out your favorite book. So you can say, I'm going to act this out either as a person, right? So in this book of this superhero, they jump from one building to the other. So they jump from one couch cushion to the other. Or you can act it out like with toys. So this doll is going to be this person in this story, and this doll is going to be the other, character in the story. So this age and stage is all about creativity and imagination and social growth. And kids learn how to negotiate their roles in play. I want to be the cook at the restaurant. I want to be the waitress at the restaurant. And being able to say, it's my turn, it's your turn. Um, and using that language, using and then we can switch type of language to cooperate. And they also at this age start enjoying rule-based games that at the age of four is preparing them for school, right? So at this game, we're going to do this. We're all going to sit down. We're all going to stand up. We're all going to go to the cafeteria, right? Because all that's setting them up through play for kindergarten. So, there's a lot going on at this age that parents are not necessarily the protagonist of the play. We really often get, you know, delegated to go over there and wash the dishes at the pretend restaurant.
Amazing. So, how does the role of a caregiver shift in a child's play as they grow?
So it goes from kind of the instigator, right? I'm putting my face up against your face, newborn, and I'm going to smile a lot. And we're, going from there to leading them. Like I'm going to clap, and then maybe you will clap after me. And then it is a lot of modeling, you know, "Abadaba, adabadaba, here's the phone, adabadabada," and kind of, mimicking and imitating and modeling that kind of behavior to then being the one being modeled. Mommy, I'm gonna, feed you these pretend peas right now, right? And now by that stage, by two-ish, we kind of take more of a back seat and we get, we're the ones that are following and fine-tuning. And so if, you have a 2.5-year-old who's saying, um, you want Wawa? And you go, I'll have water, thank you, right? So you're explain the sentence structure and the pronunciation through modeling to then maybe showing them how to play Ring Around the Rosie or showing how to play London Bridge is Falling Down to then being a participant in the game to then being, you know, you sit over there. And then as we get closer to kindergarten, so we got the kindergarten readiness between the ages of 4 and 5. Now we have fluent language, right? So we have full sentences. We can describe events. We can talk about things that happened in the past. We can tell you things that might happen in the future. We're telling stories. The pretend play is now a lot more complex. There are multiple steps, multiple roles. Things get really creative at this age, and cooperation with peers is now strong. So children are the ones negotiating the rules. They're the ones resolving minor conflicts. They're the ones who are saying, this is your role. This is how we're going to play the game. And we also have in terms of I'm going to just use it in quotes, but the academic part of it, right? So we have the early literacy, we have numeracy skills coming in. We know our letters, we're starting to learn our numbers, counting, sorting. So now we can, integrate that into play. So, for example, simple board games with turn taking is happening now. Complex imaginative play with pretend worlds, for example, acting out multi-step scenarios with friends. In the creative arts, we can have much more detail to the drawings, and there's a story behind the drawing. Collage using multimedia for different types of art. Now we are using scissors safely. Dramatic performance. So we start putting on plays for our families. Music and dance. Outdoor physical play also starts getting a little bit more organized. So you're doing organized sports for fun, like t-ball or soccer or, that kind of thing. Stuff. Obstacle courses get really fun at this age. Climbing and running games. Tag, now you can play tag, right? Because there's the rule of the tag as opposed to just the chasing. And then storytelling and literacy is like acting out your favorite book or retelling a story, or beginning the writing with shapes and letters. So developmentally, now we have the fine motor to be able to draw recognizable features and recognizable pictures and cutting shapes and manipulating small objects by putting things onto a collage. And empathy comes in this at this age. So now we have a stronger empathy and understanding of other people's perspectives because now you can role play. Now you can say, I'm the mommy and you're the baby. And then you can understand, like, wow, mommy's really tired right now. Maybe mommy should pretend to sleep. And then we can get ready for structured school routines and collaborative projects. So ideas for this might be, again, simple sports, pretend play with a narrative, like role playing with multiple peers and incorporating problem solving in the storytelling. Like, oh, wow, it all of a sudden is nighttime and we're still, trying to do this. What do you think we should do? Maybe we should build a fire so we'll be warm, so they can like problem solve within play. problem-solving games like age-appropriate puzzles or memory games, matching challenges. I Spy is fun at this age. So the takeaway for this age, right, leading up to kindergarten, is refining the social, emotional, and cognitive skills that have been developing since birth, right? So children use play to understand rules, not the other way around, right? So play helps you understand the rules. Play helps you cooperate with your peers. Play helps you express your ideas creatively. And there is that space where you can say the zaniest thing in the world and like, yep, that works because that fits into our imaginative world, right? And this stage lays the foundation for the formal learning in school. So, and off the kindergarten they go, and they learn all sorts of new words and new games.
Fantastic. Well, I certainly could talk about this forever and ever, but if there's one or two things that you want parents to take away from this conversation, what would you like for them to be?
Well, I'm going to briefly touch on one topic before I go to my takeaways, and that is screens. Screens are a big problem in early childhood development. Evidence indicates that screen-based play in early childhood is associated with negative impacts with the development of observation, with the development of parallel play, and the development of that transition into interactive play. So, excessive screen time in children under the age of 3 has been strongly linked to delays in language. It's been strongly linked to delays in motor and social skills and behavior delays. And it is dose dependent, right? The more screen time a child has, especially a passive screen time, right? You're just watching an application or you're just watching TV, right? That displaces real time, three-dimensional learning, peer play, observation. You don't have that conflict resolution skills. So, limited screen time, if you were to use screen time on a developing brain under the age of 3, then it needs to be limited, right? And it needs to be scaffolded with a parent, with co-viewing, with verbal prompts, with comments, and all those can start mitigating a little bit of the effects. But solo use, background screen exposure is consistently linked to poor outcomes in language attention and social emotional development. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 0 hours of screen time under the age of 2. Since COVID, they modified that a little bit with allowing FaceTime as appropriate use of screen time if they're communicating with a family member and there's an interaction happening. But under the age of 2, it is 0 hours a day. So in terms of like play, what I've been talking about with the development of early children, um, it evolves as the child grows and it mirrors their developmental stage. So every stage is a foundation for the next stage. So just like you can't run before you crawl, every stage of play development is built on the foundation of the next one. And play not only fosters learning, but it fosters resilience and social skills and joy and all the wonderful things that, light up our faces when we think of play. So I encourage parents to follow their child's lead and make time for unstructured play, which we can talk about a little bit later, um, and also be there for the structured play.
Amazing. So, how can parents get a hold of you if they have any questions?
So my website is morehealthykids.com. My name is Celina Moore. So my last name is Moore, and my practice name is Moore healthykids.com. My Instagram handle is at More Healthy Kids, and my phone number is on both of them. So you can always reach out. You'll get me.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us for this insightful conversation on how play changes over time. A heartfelt thank you to Dr. Celina Moore for sharing her expertise and perspective. Remember, play isn't just fun, it's essential to learning, growth, and connection at every age. Thanks for tuning into A Parent's Guide to Child Development. where we decode milestones, demystify meltdowns, and occasionally question whether goldfish crackers count as a food group. Spoiler, they do. Make sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an expert tip, breakthrough strategy, or aha moment that can make a big difference in your child's development. It's cheaper than therapy and less messy than glitter slime. We'll be back soon with more expert advice, real talk, and zero judgment. Until then, keep calm and try not to step on any Legos.